So today we are joined by Eva Gandini. She's a design and marketing manager at Clipper Retail, and that's where she leads brand, creative direction, and marketing strategy across multiple touch points. She has a unique background spanning graphic design, retail leadership, and brand building. And she has a pretty unique perspective that blends creativity with commercial thinking. I know, Eva, it's not easy to listen to someone talk about everything you do, but I know that alongside with what you're doing in marketing, you're a neuroscience identity coach
That's
and
correct.
you're the creator of Hard X Mind Method, which is a body first, nervous system led approach to identity transformation. And in this episode, we're going to explore the intersection of marketing, identity, and human behavior, and what it really takes to build brands that resonate in a very complex and fast moving world. I'm going to welcome you, but I'm going to start by asking, what is the Hard X Mind Method?
Okay, yeah. So is a method I've decided to create when I went through the journey of getting my subconscious reprogrammed. And I'm very passionate about it because essentially I've realized that the tools that I was using and I've learned over the years, they worked really, really well. But in some instances, they were quite painful. And I have this thing that I hate suffering. Everybody hates suffering, of course, but I have a really low pain threshold. And so when I've decided to become a coach, I wouldn't have wished on any of my clients to go through what I went through. And I've realized there was actually a better way to do it, to get better results, but suffer less than what I suffered. And what I realized is that the sequencing in which the tools were used was what was making the most difference. So hence why I've decided to create my method, which is starting from the body first. So we listen to the body before listening to the mind. We work on the body and specifically on the nervous system to increase its capacity. And then we work on the mind afterwards.
Eva, that's amazing. I want to hear all about it. But let's start from the very beginning because you've had a really interesting journey from retail leadership to design and now leading marketing. So, what drew you towards this transition?
I was always very passionate about helping people. I started working in beauty because I was passionate about beauty in general, so beautiful things, and helping women feeling like they were beautiful, but not transforming them, just like enhancing their own beauty and allowing them to see it. So that's how I started in retail. And then I moved into design because retail leadership was just not allowing me to express my creativity and also to represent the brand in the way that I wanted to. I wanted to be able to really take all the knowledge I've learned and put it into my designs to convey message and let the clients see the brands. And then I automatically went into marketing because I think there is no design without marketing. Like we cannot separate the two departments within a company because everything we do in design is essentially speaking about that message that marketing is trying to convey. So the two things cannot exist one without the other. That's what led me to design ultimately. And I guess neuroscience comes more from my personal journey, my personal development, which was exactly the quest of looking for happiness in life and less suffering. And it also came from the fact that when I was in leadership in retail, I started to notice how people make decisions, how my team was reacting to certain leading styles, and also how customers were reacting to products that they were offered, etc. And that because I'm a really curious person, that sparked even more my curiosity to understand what was the thought process behind that customer behavior and that people behavior in general from my team as well. So naturally, I gravitated towards neuroscience, and then I started connecting all the dots and seeing all the different connections with marketing as well. And it was just full circle for me.
I have too many questions, but um, I'm going to try to organize my mind. How did your experience in retail and customer facing roles shape the way you think about brands today?
I would say it really massively helped me to understand what brands are trying to do behind the scenes, because I was able to be in contact with the customer firsthand. So I was on the receiving end of that yes or no when you're trying to sell a product. And that expanded massively my understanding of branding. But at the same time, at the time, I now realize it was limited, because I couldn't quite understand what the marketing team was doing, obviously not being in the head office. And I know oftentimes we say, and I used to say exactly the same thing when I was on the shop floor, the head office team is not in touch with customers anymore. But actually what I've realized, it was just a miscommunication between the two teams. And now I firmly believe that every single team in a company, whether it's on the shop floor or whether it's in the head office, they have to come together to share that message in order to really portray that experience that we want the customer to create. And I think I can only understand this because I've been on both sides.
Okay, but do you think that marketers today are sometimes too far removed from the actual customer experience? Like they're behind the screen all the time and are not actually understanding what the customer really wants?
In a way, I think yes. I think it is very possible, because they're not on the receiving end of the emotion that very product or service they're trying to sell creates in the customer. And I think that is fundamental. So, because essentially what is driving people to make decisions is not logic, is their emotions, and even more so their nervous system and how we can make them feel. So essentially, I think it's very important for marketers to remember that. And sometimes when you're behind the screen, you can forget it, which is why, as I was mentioning, I think what's most important is to work together with different departments to make sure there is that two-way feedback as well, so that we never lose touch with the actual market itself, which is the clients we're trying to reach, essentially.
Eva, your role today blends design, marketing, execution, and branding. Those three things, right?
Yes.
So how do you ensure consistency across so many touch points?
So I think the best way to actually ensure consistency across so many touch points, for me, is just asking myself one really simple, quick, key question, which is, what do I want my customer to feel? So what is the feeling I would like them to have when they look at my brand, whether that is reading a copy or looking at a design I've created or looking at a LinkedIn post, etc. And I think as long as we are coherent in that message, in that feeling that we want them to feel, then we can ensure consistency. And this, from a neurological perspective, is extremely important, because essentially our nervous system recognizes coherence as familiarity, and it recognizes familiarity as safety. And whatever is safe for our nervous system, it will trust, and trust converts into sales. It's just as simple as that, because our nervous system, it works same way as it works in animals. So it only recognizes what's safe and unsafe, and it will try to protect us from what's unsafe, activating our survival mode, which is fight, flight, or freeze. So most of the times when we get no from a client, is because this survival mode has been activated, because the message that we're trying to tell them, to convey to them, is not scanned as from the nervous system. So coherence can only be created through creating familiarity, essentially, for that person, to triggering that safety emotion within them. That's the question I always ask myself. How do I want my customer to feel, and how can I make sure that my brand still feels familiar and safe to them?
I'm guessing that's the reason why we stick to brands. Like we go to the supermarket and we buy this particular brand of milk, and if for some reason it's not there, we panic. Like, I know that's my safe milk, right?
That's exactly right. Yes, we are creatures of habit, most of all. So the more we do something, the more it becomes safe to us, and the more we are going to want to do it, because then we don't have to push our nervous system out of its comfort zone, essentially. But the good thing is, well, there's a good and a bad in this, essentially, because if we keep doing the same thing, another part of us slowly, in a way, dies, which is evolution. Our brain feeds on evolution, so we can't keep doing the same things or our brain will literally die. So the bad thing is that our nervous system sometimes is preventing us from evolving as human beings. But the good thing is that we can increase its capacity. So we can constantly train our nervous system to go outside of its comfort zone. And like I was saying before, with habits, repeating something over and over again will actually make sure that our nervous system tags it as safe. And therefore it won't recognize it as a threat anymore. And it's almost like we step into the next level of life. I think of life as a big level game. And every day we've got a new challenge to look up to. And it's, if you think of it that way, at first it's quite frustrating because you keep thinking the work is never done. But actually, if you think about it that way, it's also motivating because it's just you training your nervous system to accept another challenge, another level, and evolve, essentially. So yeah.
I have 1,000 questions on this, but let's go back to brand identity and to marketing, and then we can come back. What does strong brand identity mean to you beyond just visuals?
I think for me, the most important thing is clarity. Brand positioning clarity is above everything else, the most important thing, because of that coherence that we were saying earlier as well, because we need to make sure that we know who we are as a brand, what we do, and essentially, and most importantly, why we do something for our customers before we can go out there and decide to convey any of these messagings to our clients. The frequency in which we do things, and I'm going to get a little bit into energy now, the frequency in which we do things, it's extremely important. And if we are chaotic in the background as a brand and we don't know who we are and what we do it for, then the frequency we're going to vibrate at and emit in the universe, in the world, is not coherent either. And an incoherent frequency will never be able to attract the right customers for us. That's when we create frictions. That's when customers don't understand our message. That's when the wrong customers keep showing up for what we're trying to offer and we can't actually help them. Mainly is because of coherence. So we need to go back to basics and just ask ourselves if we are clear on who we are, what we offer, and how we can help our customers.
Which is basically why we sometimes attract the wrong men, because we think we're clear on
Exactly.
what we want, but we're not. And then we say, why do I keep getting these horrible people up? Well, it's coherence.
Yes. And this is where I've drawn actually the biggest link between marketing and people, because when I started studying neuroscience and with everything I knew about marketing, I've realized that actually brands work exactly in the same way as people. And as people, if we're not clear about what we want, then we can't get it. It's like we go to the restaurant and we don't know what to order and we order like all different things, a bit scattered. And then we're surprised that what we've ordered is not come to the table because we weren't speaking the same language as the waiter. And so what we've ordered has not arrived. And that's exactly it. It works in exactly the same way for brands and for people.
That's amazing. Now, but you've worked across campaigns, UI, UX, print, and digital. So these are plenty of things. How do you approach content differently across platforms?
I think we go back to the same thing, because as long as you are clear on who you are and coherent across all your platforms, the platform will change and therefore the format, maybe the length in which you write a copy, maybe the rhythm, or maybe even the form of your message. It could be a video, it could be a post, it could be an email. They will all change. But what will not change is the frequency in which you do something. The why, essentially, you're doing what you're doing for your customers. That will remain always the same across every single touch point. And then after that, you can adapt it to the different platforms. But what we sometimes forget, I think, is that our audience doesn't see different platforms as separated. They see us as one brand and they expect to receive the same frequency and the same message across, whether it's Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn, websites, emails, etc. They just expect to see a different format in which it comes, because let's face it, we don't all want to sit and read a newsletter. We might want to just watch a 30-second video, and we need to be able to appeal to every single person in the way that they would like to digest our content. But the message and the frequency underneath it all has to be the same.
So on this note, what role does storytelling play in everything you create? Because there has to be like a coherent story behind everything.
Absolutely, yes. So the story is fundamental, and there's actually a neurological explanation to this. And the neurological explanation is that narrative actually activates more of our brain impulses, receptors, than facts ever will. So this is why stories have always sold a lot more historically, because when you take a customer on a journey with you, when you make them imagine that they are in this story with you, you activate so many parts of their brain and of their senses as well. I don't know if you've ever tried to imagine that you're eating something as opposed to actually eating it. You will see that your mouth starts salivating. You can smell it almost, you can taste it, you can hear the sound it creates in your mouth, etc. That's because essentially our brain doesn't know the difference between imagination and reality. And so the nervous system response to that imagination is exactly the same as if we were actually living that experience in real life. So a story has an enormous potential to intrigue that brain much more than just a factual representation of the product or service that we're trying to sell.
Okay, I'm going all in. Let's talk about neuromarketing. What does the science actually tell us about why people make decisions?
So I think the most overlooked scientific study or just information that marketers are again overlooking is that decisions happen in the body before they happen in the brain. Neuroscientists have proven that we make decisions 11 seconds before they actually become conscious in our mind. And this is exactly because of what I was explaining earlier. So it's not even that we're buying on emotions, but we're buying on the response of our nervous system to that particular product or service that we're trying to sell. So essentially what happens is, like I was saying, our nervous system will scan for threats and familiarity, and it will decide whether to tag it as safe or unsafe, familiar or unfamiliar. And in that split second, whatever doesn't feel safe will most likely be a no to that sale. And after that, the signal travels to the brain, to the conscious part of the brain. And the conscious part of the brain will find all the reasons as to why we shouldn't buy that product. But the decision was never in the mind. It was always already in the body, even before we realized consciously.
So it's instinct.
It's an instinct, yeah, which is why it's so important that we appeal to the nervous system of our clients as opposed to their mind. And also there's something else as well, which it's a chemical process that happens to all of us in our body, and that's the release of dopamine. And the release of dopamine doesn't only happen on reward, but it also happens on anticipation. And the actually best marketing brands in the world, they're able to sell because they're actually able to create the desire of that specific feeling in the body of their clients. So it's not just about selling you a story, it's about selling you how you are going to feel when you will hold our product in your hands or when you will experience our service, etc. So this goes one step ahead and uses dopamine releases in the favor of the brand.
You tell me this, and I immediately think about a soda that advertises like the bubbles, and and it's exactly that.
It's exactly that. And everything in that, I mean, Coca-Cola is just a hero in this. They activate every single sense of us. The sound of opening the can is on purpose because you will always link it back to that brand. The little drops of water on the ice cold can is on purpose because it will
I get
bring back
chills.
into your memory the feeling of holding that really cold bottle or can. And then, of course, the mouth watering of the little bubbles and the color as well, which is like vibrant and out there. Yeah, all of it is designed to activate all of your senses, because the more senses we activate, the more it's been proven by neuroscientists, we are likely to remember that brand.
Where do you think marketers misunderstand or oversimplify consumers' behavior today? Is it there?
It's definitely there. I think it's in thinking that customers are rational decision makers, when in fact we are so not. We make decisions based on our nervous system that is constantly scanning for safety, familiarity, and emotional resonance. So that's where the marketing world is losing the most right now, for sure. And then another misunderstanding or overlooked point anyway, which I think this one truly not many people are thinking about, but in my opinion is the most important one, is that we have over the years focused entirely on consumers' psychology, ignoring the psychology of the people creating that content. So us marketers, the people that are behind writing the email, the strategy, the campaign, etc., because we have a nervous system too, and we cannot ignore it.
Wow. Okay, we're talking about neuroscience, and I'm pretty sure all the marketers who are listening are like, okay, she's basically reading the Bible for us, but it's a lot of information. So, what are the 2 or 3 things that marketers can immediately apply from neuroscience?
I think the number one thing for me, the first thing to do is to start designing the emotion that you want your customers to feel before anything else. Because as we just said, emotion is what will get your message in their body and in their brain fast. So if you start from the emotion, then you're sure that you're not going to lose sight of your target, of what you're trying to achieve. And then you can draw anything else from that. The second thing is going to be quite hard because is actually choosing coherence over novelty. And why do I say that's going to be quite hard? Because we are creative people, so we're going to want to follow the trends. So we're going to want to create new content, etc., to remain on trend. And that's absolutely fine. I think if you're just deciding that that's the way you want to convey your message. But what I want to say is that it's really important that your message and the frequency that you vibrate at as a brand remains consistent, because actually neuroscientifically, the more consistent you are for your customer, the more trust you're actually building. Because as I was saying before, nervous system works on habit. And so the more they can see you consistently giving them the same message and the same frequency, the more their nervous system will tag you as the safe brand to go to. This is also how top of mind awareness is created, by the way, because that customer will consistently see you giving them exactly what they need in that specific niche in the same way with the same frequency. And when the next time they will need something in that niche, you're going to be the first brand that comes to mind for them.
Wow. Is there a third?
There is a third, yeah.
Okay. I am moving between being amazed and being very scared.
I think once you're aware of it, actually as a consumer, it works in your favor, because now you can see what they're trying to do and you can decide if that's for you or not more consciously than before when you didn't know. So
Let's go
yeah.
for the third.
The third is to use contrast deliberately. And what do I mean by this? Neurologically, actually, our brain is designed to notice what's different. So if you're entering a market, your point of difference will be the most powerful tool that you're going to have, because neurologically, we are designed to spot out what's different from everything else. And sometimes, especially in packaging, I see this and it baffles me, because maybe I go to the supermarket and then I look at a shelf and all the packaging looks exactly the same because somebody thought that person did it well, so I'm going to do the same. That's wrong, because when I go to the supermarket, what I'm going to notice is the one that's different. So this is me giving you permission to be different. Use that contrast deliberately to appeal your customer because it's going to notice you because of that. And I think the point of difference comes mainly from you knowing exactly why you do something, because there's also a level of authenticity, which is the highest frequency emotion. By the way, I don't know if you knew this, but authenticity is the highest we can vibrate at. So when a brand is authentically trying to solve a problem and stepping out of the comfort zone and what everybody else is doing, that's when they will most likely be noticed and remembered by customers.
So, if you are going to launch a beauty brand, do not make it pink, do not make it white, make it green.
Essentially, yeah. If it aligns with what you're trying to say, because obviously there's a color psychology as well, so I don't want to go into that. That would be another whole episode.
Oh my gosh. So you draw a parallel between personal identity and brand identity. Let's try to explain that connection.
Yes. Where do we start? So I think what made me draw this parallel is a little bit what we were talking about earlier. When I think in marketing, when our message is diluted, when we don't get the right customers, when we feel like we're not converting, we go back to the drawing board and we go back to look at our brand positioning, who we are, what we do, and we just make sure that that's very clear and that we're telling the customer in a clear enough way so that they can understand it. And actually, like we were saying earlier, that's exactly the same thing for personality, for us personally as people. So in my life, every single time I was not getting what I wanted, it was because, first of all, I wasn't clear enough on what I wanted. So I hadn't been clear enough or even honest to myself, because again, authenticity is the highest frequency. So if sometimes we desire certain things that we think are ours, but they're not actually ours, and so they will not arrive because they're not aligned with us, whether it's a job, it's a relationship, etc. And then the second biggest thing, I think, is our nervous system capacity and protecting beliefs. So what I mean by that is our brain and our nervous system has been wired a certain way, most likely when we were little. And due to that wiring, we recognize certain thing as safe, a certain thing as not safe. And essentially it creates a limit as to which we can get. And that's what's called essentially the nervous system capacity. So oftentimes when we don't get what we want is because it's outside of our capacity. And so our nervous system flags it as unsafe, and it will do everything in its power to sabotage it. Sometimes we won't even realize that it's sabotaging it, because being our brain and our nervous system in general, the most efficient and energy consuming system in our body, it has to preserve as much energy as possible. And therefore, when it has a belief installed, for example, one that people understand it very, very easily is making money is hard, is one of the most well-known beliefs in the whole entire world. Once we have this belief, our brain and nervous system have one job, which is to prove us right. So whatever opportunity will come our way that can make us money easily, our brain will be like, no, you're not coming in my life because I have to prove right that make money is hard, which is why it's so important, the beliefs that we hold and how much capacity our nervous system essentially has. And we do all of that unconsciously. So that's another part that I think it's very interesting, because it kind of takes me to think about what are we attracting as marketers in our brands if this is our design, our internal design.
Wow. I think it's on this note because one of your most interesting points is that employee identity is part of corporate strategy, right?
Yes, I firmly stand behind this.
Okay. Could you please explain?
Yeah, sure. I'm going to start by saying that actually should be not just marketing, just every single team personal identity work should be on the corporate strategy. Because I touched a little bit on this before, but we cannot forget that we have nervous systems as well. So we can't pretend that when we clock into work, our cells will stop vibrating. It's not how it works. We take our nervous system wherever we go. And if we are dysregulated, and that can come from many different things, one of those, like I was saying, is just a nervous system that recognizes expansion as unsafe. But also chronic stress, for example, which we see all the time in teams nowadays. Something very easy to explain happens, and it's that when our body is flooded with cortisol because we're in chronic stress state, essentially it narrows the cognitive bandwidth of our brain because our nervous system is trying to fight this threat that it recognizes life being in that moment. Everything around us is tagged as a threat in that moment. So essentially, physiologically, what happens is that our blood leaves our brain and it goes to the muscles because we need to be ready to either fight, flight, or freeze. So other parts of our brain that are deemed as not important in that moment, like creativity, get switched off. And you can understand how if a marketing person is in chronic stress and therefore their creativity side of the brain is switched off, it has huge ripple effect on that company because they're not using their brain to their entire capacity in that moment. And everything they're creating from that moment onward is coming from a state of having to feel safe. So they will propose campaigns that they've done before because they felt safe, because in that moment it doesn't feel safe to go over their boundaries, to take a step forward and expand their capacity even more. So I actually think it's a money loss, essentially. If you're trying to find a way to sell it to your directors, then say that it is a money loss because it is. Because the best ideas in teams don't even get to the table. They don't even get said in the meetings because the nervous system of this person doesn't tag it as safe. And so we are losing out on a huge part of what could be evolving that brand, essentially.
And I'm guessing that is why sometimes you are stressing over something and you're looking at the computer and you just cannot figure it out. And then you go to sleep or go for a walk and come back and you just figure it out.
Yes, that's exactly it. Yeah. Because you can, even without realizing, we do have certain mechanisms throughout the day that regulate our nervous system, like walking is one of them. So even just going for a walk out in nature can straight away change the frequency in our body. And so we come back with a different frequency and we can activate that part of our brain again because we've taken our body out of survival mode. This is also what I see a lot behind the people that are like have the creative block. This is exactly it. The creative block is just because your body is in survival mode in that moment. But there's exercise that take literally 2 minutes to reset your nervous system and then you're good to go again.
Let's keep going. What happens internally within teams that most marketing strategies fail to consider? Is it this? Is it the fact that people are overworked, overstressed, over 1,000 things and they cannot just be creative?
Yes, I think the main reason would be the frequency in which the work is created from, for sure, because we just don't feel like that we can take the risk. And so the ideas don't even make it to the table, to the brainstorming table. So that's where a huge loss is in those teams. But another part as well is the frequency from which we create something in terms of the outcome that we want to receive. What do I mean by that? I mean that when we focus on, for example, how much we want that campaign to convert or how much money we want to make, that's quite a low frequency to create from, as opposed to when we focus on what we're trying to do for that customer or that client. Because everything we do comes from us wanting to solve an issue for them. And when we focus on that and the emotion that we want them to feel, as opposed to the money that we want to make for our directors, etc., the outcome of that campaign is going to be completely different because all of a sudden we went from fear of not performing, of not making enough money, of not converting enough, fear of the targets, to expansion, to how we want to help people, how we want to make them happy, how we want for them to enhance their life with our products. And is a much higher frequency to create from.
I would definitely want to have you as my boss. And I know you've managed teams, stores, and now brand strategy. But since I would love to have you as my boss, I want to know how your leadership style has evolved.
It's changed massively thanks to this work, to this personal development and nervous system literacy, I would say. Maybe when I was back in retail, I had little knowledge about this. And even though my team have always told me that they could never sense my stress, but within me, I was a mess all the time. I was consistently in fight or flight mode, stress, chronic stress, etc. And people can't name it, but they can definitely feel it. And it doesn't create a nice environment. It doesn't create an environment where we can all grow together and the company can grow with us. So now that I'm more aware of it, even as a creative person, actually, I used to get creative blocks all the times as a designer, and I used to blame myself, not feeling good enough, etc. But when I've understood this, it shifted massively the work I output, first of all, and the way I connect with people and my customers as well. So knowing the frequency in which you create something, knowing what's your goal as opposed to your targets, etc., is make a huge impact on my leadership, for sure.
So I don't think people are going to be like you in 2 months, but what skills do you think modern marketers need beyond technical expertise?
I think the first one would be self-awareness.
Okay.
So I don't think, it might sound very naive, but I don't think you can know people until you know yourself. And once you have started to get to know yourself and the state from which you create your work from and your own clarity, what you want, that's when you will understand how other people work too. And you'll be able to connect with them at a much deeper level. And in order to do this, we need nervous system literacy, for sure. So we need to understand when we are dysregulated and how to bring us back to our center. Which, by the way, is quite easy to do and anybody can do very fast. You don't need to
How?
study all of this. There's several exercises to regulate nervous system. So yeah, but I think the main thing is people judge this as soft skills and they don't understand that actually nervous system literacy is a performance skill. You just can't give your best until you understand how you operate as a human being and how to get the most of it.
Okay, this is a lot of information. So people are listening. Marketers are listening. So if you had to leave these people, the marketers who are listening, with one thought as they navigate today's complexity, what would that be?
I think it would be, even before you start auditing your brand strategy, I would audit the identity that this strategy is built from. So look at your team and yourself first. Start there. In which frequency and in which nervous system capacity are they creating from? That's my biggest advice. So I want to actually leave everybody with one question today. And that is, what identity are you currently marketing from?
Eva, wow. You've blown my mind. I know you've blown plenty of people's minds. So if they want to reach you, if they want to talk to you, where can they find you?
They can find me pretty much on every platform. So I'm on LinkedIn as Eva Gandini, and then they can find me on Instagram and Facebook, TikTok. I have my own page, which again is very simple, Eva Gandini, or my method page. It's _heart x mind.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you.